soon as I took my VPN off, now it's working. So the VPN, what it does is it also finds you websites that you can't find in the United States. Sometimes people want to find content, you know, from other countries, and VPNs also help with that too. So they'll find you. Yeah, there we go. All right, meeting is now streaming on live. Shalom, everyone. I'm Brother Doug with the Wakened by Yahuwah Fellowship Assembly. Today, I have Sister Sadia with me, and with us, Sister Sally, and we're going to be doing we're starting our Torah portion. I'm going to be using the Word software. Okay, so I'm going to be using this Word software, which, by the way, if you guys want to know about the Word software, you can look for the video. I'll put the link description for the video in the link for this, the description for this video, so you can just click on it. And I did a whole tutorial on how to install this. This is a great program called the Word software, and it's for desktop only. So I'm using it because we're going to look between the Targum on Kalos and the Brenton's English Septuagint side by side today for the Genesis part of our Torah portion. So here we go. All right. And I notice there's a lot of noise going on today in our hotel, so I think I'm going to put my earbuds in. All right. Hold on a second, guys. We're about to start the reading. Hold on. All right, here we go. And so we read up to verse 8 last time. Okay, so we're going to be starting the Torah portion here right now. So here we go. All right, so we're going to start at verse 9 here. But Noah found favor before Yahuwah Elohim. Interesting enough, Elohim is missing in the Onkelos there, which is kind of interesting. Okay. And these, the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man. Being perfect in his generation, Noah was well-pleasing to Elohim. Okay, what's interesting is that the Targum says righteous and perfect. So meaning that he was righteous, but he was also tamim. So he was both. So I kind of like that about the Targum. And it tells you what being well-pleasing to Elohim means in the Targum here. It says, in the fear of Yahuwah, Noah walked. So that gives you the context, right? Okay, so, and Noah begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. But the earth was corrupted before Elohim, and the earth was filled with lawlessness. Okay, the Targum says the earth was corrupted before Yahuwah, so the Tetragrammaton instead of Elohim. And the earth was filled with violences. A little more specific there. That's interesting. And Yahuwah Elohim saw the earth, and it was corrupted, because all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth. Now, let's keep in mind here, all flesh has to refer to everyone that's not the family of Noah, and even referring to whatever wives Noah's sons would have had for themselves, because as far as we know, Noah had no daughters. So, okay, that would be basically 80-90% of humankind would be corrupted according to Genesis 6, verse 13. Okay. So again, it's weird that we see here Elohim is missing in the Targum version of this verse. So the Septuagint says Yahuwah Elohim. The Targum just says Yahuwah. Interesting. Okay. So, all right. And Yahuwah Elohim said to Noah, a period of all men is come before me, because the earth has been filled with iniquity by them. And behold, I destroy them and the earth. Okay. Now, I would say probably the more correct version of this verse is some translations actually fix this and say, I will destroy them from the earth. That's what happened. We're not on the second earth right now. So this is not saying that Yahuwah destroyed the earth back then. This is saying he destroyed the wicked inhabitants from the earth, just to give context there. Okay. All right. And Targum of Onkelos gets a little bit more specific here. It talks about from the face of their wicked works, and behold, I will destroy them. And again, it says with the earth, but I can guarantee you it was not the earth was not destroyed with them. There's no verse anywhere that says Yahuwah created a new earth after the flood. So anyway, verse 14, make therefore for yourself an ark of square timber. You shall make the ark in compartments, and you shall pitch it within and without the pitch. And you shall make the ark 300 cubits, the length of the ark, and the 50 cubits, the breadth, and the 30 cubits, the height of it. And you shall narrow the ark in making it, and in a cubit above you shall finish it, and the door of the ark you shall make on the side with the lower, second, and third stories you shall make it. Okay. All right, moving on here. And behold, I bring a flood of water upon the earth to destroy all flesh, in which is the breath of life under heaven. And whatsoever things are upon the earth shall die. And I will establish. Whoops, hold on, my bad. Keeps doing that every once in a while. All right, verse 19. And I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall enter into the ark, and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you. And of all cattle and of all reptiles and of all wild beasts, even of all flesh, you shall bring by pairs of all into the ark. You shall, and you may feed them with yourself, male and female they shall be. Interesting. So the Targum doesn't really describe all different types of animals like the Septuagint does in this verse. The Targum will just say, of all that lives of all flesh, 2 and 2, of all that enter into the ark to abide with you, male and female, they shall be. Okay. Okay. All right. Of all winged birds after their kind, of all cattle after their kind, of all reptiles creeping unto the earth after their kinds, pairs of all shall come into you, male and female, to be fed with you. Okay. Okay. A fowl according to its kinds of every creeping thing of the earth after its kind, 2 of all shall enter in with you to abide. And actually, the Onkelos here shows that they are not eating unclean animals, because I know some Christians would say, well, see, he brought, all these unclean animals for them to eat. No, notice how it just says to abide with you, to live with you. Okay. Just saying. And you shall take to yourself of all kinds of food which you eat. Notice how the Septuagint separates all foods which you eat from the previous verse talking about reptiles. Notice that. Okay. So obviously there's a clean and unclean even back then. Okay. And you shall take to yourself all kinds of food which you eat, and you shall gather to yourself, and it shall be for you and them to eat. Okay. And Noah did all things whatever Yahuwah Elohim commanded him, so he did. Okay, and again, the only difference here we have is there's no Elohim here in the Onkelos. Onkelos just says Yahuwah. So anyway, we're going to move to the next chapter here, chapter 7. Okay, chapter 7 here. And Yahuwah Elohim said to Noah, enter you and all your family into the ark, for you I have seen righteous before me in this generation. Okay. And of the clean cattle, take into you sevens, male and female. And of the unclean cattle, pairs, male and female. Okay. So it says, notice how he says, of the clean cattle, take in you sevens, male and female. And of the unclean, only take a pair, only take one of each, male and female. So notice how there's a lot more clean animals he's taking with him, which would be obviously to assume that's going to be their food, the clean cattle, obviously. So, okay. And of clean flying creatures of the sky, sevens, male and female, and of all the unclean flying creatures, pairs, male and female, to maintain seed on all the earth. So anyone that taught, I know we've been taught in Sunday school, they took pairs 2 by 2. Well, actually, if you go to the next chapter, Yahuwah is telling Noah to bring sevens of all clean creatures, okay? And only pairs of the unclean. So, okay. All right, to maintain seed on all the earth. Okay. For yet 7 days I bring rain upon the earth, 40 days and 40 nights I will blot out every offspring. And see, this is what I was referring to. He's not destroying the earth. Notice in verse 4 what it says. I will blot out every offspring which I have made from the face of the earth. Okay. And Noah did all things, whatever Yahuwah Elohim commanded him. So again, the Targum just has Yahuwah, not Yahuwah Elohim. And Noah did according to all that Yahuwah had instructed them. And Noah was 600 years old when the flood of the water was upon the earth. And then when in Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him into the ark because of the water of the flood. Okay, and I find it interesting that they call it the deluge in the Onkelos here instead of the Septuagint, even though the Septuagint is a Greek translation. I kind of find that interesting. Okay. So just wanted to take note of that. I thought that was interesting that they just took the word deluge in the Targum Onkelos, which is an Aramaic version. So that's kind of interesting. So they didn't translate it to flood. That's interesting. And of clean flying creatures and of the unclean flying creatures and of clean cattle and of the unclean cattle and of all things that creep upon the earth, pairs went into Noah into the ark, male and female, as Elohim commanded Noah. And what I like better here about the Onkelos is it has Yahuwah for verse 9 here of chapter 7 of Genesis. 2 and 2 they entered with Noah into the ark, male and female, as Yahuwah had instructed Noah. Okay. And it came to pass after the 7 days that the water of the flood came upon the earth. Okay. And in the 600th year of the life of Noah, in the second month, on the 27th day of the month, on this Yom, all the fountains of the abyss, meaning the waters under the waters, were broken up. And the floodgates of heaven, meaning the rakia, the firmament, were opened. Okay. Or in your Catholic Bible would say the dome opened. Okay. And rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On that very day, Noah, Shem, Ham, Japheth, the sons of Noah, entered, and the wife of Noah, and the three wives of his sons with him into the ark. So as we see later on, as we get further into the Torah, make a mental note of this. The three wives we're going to see here, it's very possible that these three wives were not pure. So we're going to keep that in mind. Okay. And all the wild beasts after their kind, and all the cattle after their kind, and every reptile moving itself on the earth after its kind, and every flying bird after its kind. Okay. All right. Noah went in to the ark, pairs, male and female of all flesh, in which is the breath of life. So basically, it's saying that Noah led these animals in. Okay. So, all right. Okay. So now we're at verse 15 of our Torah portion. Okay. Let me just, all right. Let me admit we got some more brothers and sisters coming in here. So let me admit everyone. All right. So we're continuing where our Torah portion. Okay. Verse 15 of Genesis 7. And it says, Noah went in with the pairs of the animals, the male and female of all flesh, in which is the breath of life. And they that entered went in, male and female of all flesh, as Elohim commanded Noah. And Yahuwah Elohim shut the ark outside of him. So that's what the Brenton says. The Targum on Kalos on the other side of my word software here has, and they entered, male and female of all flesh, entered as Yahuwah commanded him, and Yahuwah protected them by his word. Oh, I wonder who that's referring to. I wonder. And the flood was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. And the water abounded greatly and bore up the ark, and it was lifted on high from off the earth. Okay. And like I was just mentioning before on the recording here, I find it interesting. A Greek term, deluge, is in the Targum on Kalos. I find that very interesting that they didn't translate it as flood. It's very interesting. And there was a deluge 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased and took up the ark, and it was lifted up above the earth. Okay. And the water prevailed and abounded exceedingly upon the earth, and the ark was borne upon the water, or waters, as the Onkelos here has. The ark went upon the faces of the waters. Okay. And the water prevailed exceedingly upon the earth and covered all the high mountains which were under the earth, under the heaven, or as Onkelos has, heavens. Okay. 15 cubits upwards was the water raised, and it covered all the high mountains. Okay. And there died all flesh that moved upon the earth, of flying creatures, cattle, and of wild beasts, and every reptile moving upon earth, and every man. Okay. And all things which have the breath of life and whatsoever was on the dry land died. Okay. And Elohim blotted out every offspring which was upon the face of the earth, both man and beast, reptiles and birds of the sky. They were blotted out from the earth. Okay, so the earth was not destroyed. And Noah was left alone, and those with him in the ark. Okay. And the water was raised over the earth 150 days. So now we're going to go to Genesis chapter 8. Right now we're in the Genesis portion of our Torah portion for today. We've already read chapter 6 and 7, so we got about 3 more chapters. So far, as I reminded the viewers and listeners, keep in mind that we don't have any proof that Noah's daughters-in-laws, I guess you could call them, the wives of his 3 sons, we have no proof that they're pure. We don't know nothing about their parents. For all we know, their parents could have been hybrids, and there could be a genetic problem getting onto the ark. And we might be seeing some proof of that later on, especially with Canaan. So Anyway, so Genesis chapter 8. And Elohim remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the cattle and all the birds and all the reptiles that creep, as many as were with him in the ark. And Elohim brought a wind upon the earth, meaning his ruach, his wind, okay? And the water stayed, okay? I like how the Unkelos here says Yahuwah instead of Elohim. Yahuwah remembered Noah and every living thing and all the cattle which were in with him in the ark, and Yahuwah caused the wind to pass over the earth, and the waters rested, and the springs of the abyss were shut up. Okay. And okay, so now we're going to go to verse 2 here. All right. And it says, so verse 2 says, and the fountains of the deep were closed up, the floodgates of heaven, and the rain from heaven was withheld or restrained. Okay. Verse 3, and the water subsided and went off the earth, and after 150 days, the water was diminished, and the ark rested in the 7th month, and on the 27th day of the month on the mountains of Ararat. That's interesting. Huh. Interesting that that's missing. So either that's in the next verse, I would hope. Okay. Thank goodness. Okay. All right. It is okay. The verses are just a little off. Okay. That's not that bad. I thought they actually omitted the mountains of Ararat. I was about to get a little worried there for the Unkelos. Okay. So they put it actually in the next verse. Okay. Upon the mountains of Cardu. Okay. And the water continued to decease until the 10th month. And in the 10th month, on the first day of the month, so you could say on the new moon, the heads of the mountains were seen. Okay. All right. Yep. So word for word the same there. And it came to pass after 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. Okay. And he sent forth a raven, going, he went forth and returned not until the water was dried from off the earth. And he sent a dove after it to see if the water had ceased from the earth. Okay, and the dove, not having found rest for her feet, returned to him in the ark, because the water was on all the face of the earth, and stretched out his hand and took her and brought her to himself into the ark. Just a little note, I find it interesting that there might be a spiritual connection with the dove to Yahuwah and Yahusha. You know, the fact that Yahusha found no rest when he was on the earth. So I don't know, that's just a little anecdote. Little anecdote there. Yeah. So let's see here. The dove, not having found rest, okay, brought herself to himself into the ark. Okay. And having waited yet 7 other days, he again sent forth the dove from the ark, and the dove returned to him in the evening, and had a leaf of olive, interesting, a sprig in her mouth. And Noah knew that the water had ceased from the earth. Okay. And having waited yet 7 other days, he again sent forth the dove, and she did not return to him again any more. Interesting. So another week. It's kind of interesting. I guess she would have returned to him on the 7th day. That would be kind of interesting to know. And it came to pass in the 601st year of the life of Noah, in the 1st month, on the 1st day of the month, the water subsided. Okay. And Noah opened the covering of the ark which he had made, and he saw that the water had subsided from the face of the earth. Okay. That's interesting. So the Targum on Kalos seems to lack this phrase here. He saw that the water had subsided from the face of the earth. That's kind of interesting. It's a little interesting tidbit there. And the second month, the earth was dried on the 27th day of the month. Okay. And Yahuwah Elohim spoke to Noah, saying, "Go out from the ark, you and your wife and your sons' wives with you." Okay. And all the wild beasts, as many as were with you, and all flesh, both of birds and beasts, and every reptile moving upon the earth, bring forth with you, and increase you and multiply upon the earth. So it doesn't say eat all wild beasts that were with you on the ark. It says bring with you so they can multiply. Okay. Just thought I would add that there. Okay. And Noah came forth, and his wife, and his sons wives with him, and all the wild beasts, and all the cattle, and every bird, every reptile creeping upon the earth after their kind came forth out of the ark. Okay. And Noah built an altar to Yahuwah, and took of all clean beasts. Okay. So there's a law of cleanness before the law of Moses. Okay. And of all clean birds, and offered a whole burnt offering upon the altar. Now, later on, we see in the Levitical priesthood that the priests would eat of their sacrifices. So I think it's, in my opinion, I know others disagree in the Hebrew roots movement, but I think chapter 8, verse 20 clearly debunks any type of unclean eating that Noah would have been eating. So, okay. That's just my opinion. Okay. And Yahuwah Elohim smelled a smell of sweetness, and Yahuwah Elohim having considered and said, I will not anymore curse the earth because of the works of men, because of the imagination of man is intently bent upon evil things from his youth. I will not therefore anymore smite all living flesh as I have done. Okay. So he's promising never to send a flood to destroy all flesh again. Okay. All the days of the earth, seed and harvest, cold and heat, summer and spring, shall not cease day or night. Okay. And I kind of like how the Targum on Kalos on this verse says, yet all the days of the earth, seeding time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. So it includes the harvest time, the reaping, and all that. So now we're going to go to chapter 9 of Genesis. Okay, here we go. And Elohim Baruch Noah and his sons and said to them, increase and multiply and fill the earth and have dominion over it. That's interesting. Huh. Another thing omitted. That's interesting. And I kind of wonder if the difference I'm seeing here is the same differences it would have with the Masoretic. Kind of interesting. It would be interesting to know, since the Septuagint is farther away from the Masoretic text than the Targum on Kalos is. It's the Targum on Kalos would have been physically written down in 120 AD, and the Masoretic is like 800 AD. So you're only talking about 700 years in between the Targums and the Masoretic text. So I'm just noticing some differences that could be similar if we were testing the Septuagint and the Masoretic. Okay, so having dominion over it is not even mentioned in verse 1 of the Targum. Okay, all right. And the dread and the fear of you shall be upon all the wild beasts of the earth, and on all the birds of the sky, and on all the things moving upon the earth, and upon all the fish of the sea. I have placed them under your power. Okay. All right. And every reptile which is living shall be to you for meat, meaning for food. Okay. So in the British language, the old British language, meat just refers to food. What is to be eaten. So just to explain that. Okay. That's why it's, if you look at verse 3 in the Targum, it just says, every moving thing that lives for you it shall be eaten, as the green herb has been given to you, the whole. And I find this to be very contradictory because he's making a distinguish between clean and unclean prior to this chapter in verse 20 of chapter 8, and then prior to that we saw in chapter 7. So very, I would warn people not to take this meaning that we have a license to start eating reptiles and all that. I don't know. To me, that's very weird. And I would really question whether they translated it into English correctly in the Bretons. That doesn't make any sense. So it's very possible Breton could have screwed up and mistranslated it. So yeah, I definitely would not take one isolated verse like this and build a whole doctrine around it that we can eat unclean animals, because I doubt Yahuwah would advise that when he's making a distinction between unclean and clean in the previous 2 chapters, and he's telling Noah to bring 7 clean and only 2 unclean. So just saying. Anyway. Okay, so, but flesh with the blood of life you shall not eat. We see this later on in the Torah of Moses, right? In the law of Moses, okay? Do not eat the blood. For your blood of your lives will I require at the hand of all wild beasts, and I will require the life of man at the hand of his brother man. Okay, that was weird. Okay. Let's see here. He that sheds man's blood, instead of that blood shall be his own. Let me just see here. Okay, let's see here. He that sheds man's blood, instead of that blood shall be his own blood shed. For in the image of Elohim I made man. And let's see here in the Targum Onkelos, it says, whosoever sheds the blood of man by witnessing upon the sentence of the judges, his blood shall be shed, because in the image of Yahuwah made he man. So almost the same there, but Yahuwah's there in the Onkelos versus Elohim in the Septuagint. Okay, but do you increase and multiply and fill the earth and have dominion over it? Okay. All right. And again, there's no mention of having dominion here in the Targum. It's very weird. They keep omitting that. I wonder why. Okay. And Elohim spoke to Noah and to his sons. And Elohim spoke to Noah and his sons with him, saying, okay. And again, I like how the Targum is using Yahuwah rather than Elohim. Okay. And behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your seed after you, and with every living creature with you, of birds and of beasts, and with all the wild beasts of the earth, as many as are with you, of all that come out of the ark. That's interesting. Okay, it says, as many as are with you, every living creature with you, of birds that come out of the ark, of every animal of the earth. So of the earth, there's not in the Septuagint. That's interesting. Very interesting. Okay, verse 11. I will establish my covenant with you and all flesh, and shall not any more die with the water of the flood, and there shall no more be a flood of the earth to destroy all the earth. Okay, I will establish my covenant with you, and all flesh shall not again be consumed by the waters of a deluge, nor shall there be again a deluge to destroy the earth. And Yahuwah Elohim said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant which I set between me and you, and between every living creature which is with you for perpetual generations. Okay. I set my, and the only difference we have here in verse 12 again is no Elohim after Yahuwah in the Targum there. Okay, so verse 13 here. I set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a sign of covenant between me and the earth. And what's interesting in the Targum on Kalos, it says the covenant he's going to make with them is between his word and the earth. Interesting. So between Yahusha and the earth. Interesting. Okay. And it shall be when I gather clouds upon the earth that my bow shall be seen in the cloud. Okay. And I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you, and between every living life and all flesh. There shall no longer be a water for a deluge. There we go. Now the Septuagint is using deluge. Okay. Flood, deluge. So as to blot out all flesh. So as we can see here, this is another third witness that the earth was not destroyed in the deluge. It was flesh. All flesh was destroyed, not the earth. Okay. But what I find interesting here in the Targum version to the right here, it says, and I will remember the covenant which is between my word and between you and between every living soul of all flesh. So if his word is not him, then we got a problem here, because the Septuagint is saying between him and the earth versus his word and the earth. So if his word's another person, then we got a problem here. And I would recommend you checking out our oneness study we did recently to reconcile, which seems to be a contradiction, which is not, between the Targums and the Septuagint. Okay. So that might help you out there. Okay. And my bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look to remember the everlasting covenant between me and the earth, and between the living soul and all flesh which is upon the earth. Okay. And Elohim said to Noah, this, the sign of the covenant which I have made between me and all flesh which is upon the earth. And notice again how it says, I have established Targum and Kalos between my word and between all flesh is upon the earth. So in my opinion, this is showing that Yahuwah is his word. Okay. He is the word of Yahuwah. They're one and the same. Okay. Now the sons of Noah which came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Ham was the father of Canaan. Okay. It's kind of interesting. They're telling you he's the father of Canaan. Let's keep that in mind as we're going to see what happens with his lineage. These three are the sons of Noah. Of these were men scattered over all the earth. And Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine and was drunk and was naked in his house. So Noah drank a little too much of that new wine. He underestimated, I guess, the strength of the wine. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and he went out and told his brothers without. Just to make a note of, if you just do a little search in your MySword or whatever program you're using, or you just look up, verses about nakedness, okay, uncovering his dad's nakedness, you'll see the context of what that's referring to, what that action is in Torah. And Yahuwah actually makes a commandment later on about uncovering your father's nakedness. So I would assume and assert that this is not just referring to pulling the covers of his dad and seeing his dad drunk and asleep. I sincerely doubt that. Okay. I believe he uncovered his dad nakedness, meaning he slept with his dad's wife. Okay. So anyway, verse 23, Shem, Japheth, having taken a garment, put it on both their backs and went backwards and covered the nakedness of their father, and their face was backward, and they saw not the nakedness of their father. And Noah recovered from the wine and knew all that his younger son had done. And he said, cursed be the servant of Canaan, a slave shall be to his brothers. Okay, and he said, Baruch be Yahuwah, Elohim of Shem, and Canaan shall be his bondservant. May Elohim make room for Japheth and let him dwell in the habitations of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. So this is interesting. And on Kalos instead of Elohim says Yahuwah shall enlarge Japheth, he shall make his esteem or majesty to dwell in the tabernacles of Shem. That's interesting. And Canaan shall be a servant unto them. Okay. And Noah lived after the flood 350 years, and all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. And just to make mention, we already read most of Genesis 6 last week, so we probably went over it. But the 120 years in, I believe it's in either the Jerusalem Targum or the Targum of Jonathan, is not referring to a direct lifespan after the flood, because you'll see throughout the Torah, they don't get to 120 years until Moses. Okay. So just thought I would add that, and I could show you guys proof of that. I can go to my Kindle here and show you guys that it seems like the 120 years had more to do with giving them that time to repent before the flood. So let's see here. Okay, so let's go to Genesis 6 just real quick, just as a little tie-in here to try to explain why people are still living 900 years, even though Noah was righteous, and I understand that, but it's not just Noah living to 900 years after the flood. There's a lot of people that are. So let's see here. But Noah, he was righteous in his generation, but found favor and mercy before Yahuwah. Okay, and as you can see here, the Targum Jerusalem lets us know who took Enoch up to see visions in heaven. It says there was Oh no, my bad. That's different. That's talking about repentance and Yahuwah and his word for making man. My bad. That's a whole different verse there. Let me see here. I might have to go to the Jonathan one because there's a lot of fragments in that particular Targum. Let's see here. All right. Let's see here. I think it's Genesis. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Let me go back. Sorry for taking so long, guys. All right. Here we go. All right. Verse 5. And Yahuwah saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and all the imaginary thought of his heart was evil every day. And it repented, or probably a better word would be relented, Yahuwah in his word that he had made man upon earth, and he passed judgment upon them by his word. And Yahuwah said, I will abolish by my word mankind, who I am created upon the face of the earth, from man to cattle to reptile to the fowl of the heavens, because I have relented in my word that I have made them. But Noah was righteous and found favor before Yahuwah. These are the generations of the ethnicity of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, complete in Tob works in his generation, and in the fear of Yahuwah Noah walked. And Noah begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And the earth was corrupted through the inhabitants thereof, who had declined from their ways of righteousness before Yahuwah. And the earth was filled with rapine, which I guess is violence. Okay. And Yahuwah beheld the earth, and lo, it was corrupt, for all flesh had everyone corrupted his way upon the earth. And Yahuwah said to Noah, the end of all flesh comes before me, because the earth is filled with violence by their evil works. Behold, I will destroy them from the earth. And okay, he talks about making gopher wood. Okay, where is the 120 years verse I'm looking for? Oh, might be earlier in chapter 6. I don't know why I was thinking. Okay. See here. Yeah, here we go. My bad. It's verse 3 in the Targum. Okay. And Yahuwah said, by his word, all the generations of wicked are to arise, shall not be purged after the order of the judgment of the generation of the deluge, meaning wicked men after the deluge will not be destroyed by the flood again. which shall be destroyed and exterminated from the midst of the world. Have I not imparted my set apart spirit to them, or placed my set apart spirit in them, that they may work Tob works? Behold, their works are wicked. Behold, I will give them a prolongment of 120 years, that they may work repentance and not perish. So, in my opinion, the 120 years, even though later on it did become a life expectancy, at the moment it seems like the 120 years he's referring to at that moment is more of a prolongment of repentance before the flood. 120 years to repent before the flood comes. So anyway, all right, so let's see here. We're gonna go to, I think we're now gonna be at chapter 10 of Genesis. All right. These are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and the sons were born to them after the flood, or as the Targum says, after the deluge. And the sons of Japheth, or Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Yavan, see, Elisa, that's interesting, and Tubal, Meshech, and Tiraz. So there's like another person. That's interesting. Elisa is not mentioned in the Targum. That's interesting. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz. I wonder who that's referring to. Okay, Ashkenaz and Ripha and Togarmah. Notice how it's the sons of Gomer. This is not Shem. Okay, this is from Japheth. Okay, Ripha and Togarmah. Okay. All right. And the sons of Yavan, Elisha, and Tarshish, and Sitians, or Kittim, and Rhodians. From these were the islands of the Gentiles divided in their lands. Okay, in their land, each according to his tongue, in their tribes and in their ethnoses, or ethnicities. And the sons of Ham, Cush, and Mitzrayim. Okay, so you got Cush, Mitzrayim, Pud, and Canaan came from Ham. Okay, so Canaan, we got the Canaanites, Mitzrayim, the Egyptians. Okay, Put, and the sons of Cush, Saba, Avila, and Sabatha, and Regma, and Sabathaka, and the sons of Regma, Saba, and Dadan. And Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a giant upon the earth. He was a giant hunter against Yahuwah. The reason I'm reading it as against instead of before is because if you look into the original Greek and the Hebrew, that word actually means against, not before. Okay, he was a giant hunter before, or actually against Yahuwah Elohim. Therefore, as they say, as Nimrod, the giant hunter before Yahuwah. So he began to be a giant, and also he started hunting giants, and he was actually against Yahuwah. And the reason I know that is, even if we go to the Targums, they'll show us here that he was against Yahuwah. He was not for Yahuwah at this point. Okay. The Targum of Jonathan actually says he rebelled. He was great in rebellion against Yahuwah. So, okay. Let's see here. Here we go. He was a mighty rebel before Yahuwah. There it is said, for the day that the world was created, there has not been as Nimrod, mighty in hunting and a rebel against Yahuwah. Okay. So anyway, that kind of proves the point I was trying to make. So he was not for Yahuwah at this point in time. Okay. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babylon, or Babel, and Erech, Arkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar, which, according to the Targum, would assert that Shinar is Babel. Okay. So let's keep that in mind. Once we get to Genesis 14, we're going to keep that in mind in our later Torah portions. We're going to keep in mind Shinar is the same place as Babylon. Okay. Out of that land came Assyria. The land of Assyria came out of that land. And then Nimrod would have also built Nineveh and the city Rehoboth and Kalak. And Des between Nineveh and Kalak, this is a great city. Okay. All right. And Metzraim begot Ludim, and the Naphthalim, and the Enemitim, and the Labim. And yeah. Okay. And the Patro Sonim, and the Kazmonim, whence came forth the Philistines and the Gaphtorim. So basically from Mitzrayim's line, we have the Philistines, which were giants. Okay. So just one of the descendants of Ham already is bringing forth giants already. Okay. And Canaan begot Sidon, his firstborn, and the Hittite, here we go, here's a giant tribe, Jebusite, giants, Amorite, giants, Girgashite, giants. Okay. And I know some people that believe in the Sethite theory, they're going to say, oh, they weren't, hybridized giants. They were just tall men. Well, let me just go to one verse to disprove that theory. I'm going to go to one verse here. Okay. In Amos chapter 2, verse 9, just to prove that these guys were not just tall men. Okay. No regular tall man is as tall as a cedar tree. Okay. Nevertheless, I cut off the Amorite from before them, whose height was as the height of a cedar. And he was as strong as an oak, like an oak tree. Okay, that does not sound like a regular man. Okay. And I dried up his fruit from above and his roots from beneath. Okay. Okay, so, and I really believe this is the Magna Carta to understanding the rest of the Tanakh. If you don't understand what happened in Genesis 6:4, you're going to misunderstand the whole Tanakh. So I would really recommend you praying to the Father about that. If you still believe in the Sethite theory, you really need to pray to him to show you the truth about that verse and true interpretation of that verse. Okay. Anyway, moving on here. Okay. So, and the Jebusite, the Amorite, the Girgashite, the Ivite, the Archidite, the Assanite, okay, and the Aradian, the Samarian, and the Amathite. After this, the tribes of the Canaanites were dispersed. So the Canaanites were all these tribes that were just listed, okay, including the Amorites. Okay, so here we go. All right, so they were from Sidon till one comes to Gerara and Gaza, till one comes to Sodom and Gomorrah, Adamah, Zoibim, as far as Daza. That kind of makes sense why why those places were so wicked, like Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, you got the Canaanites dwelling there, so that kind of makes sense. They're the sons of Ham in their tribes, according to their tongues, in their countries, and in their nations or peoples. And to Shem himself also were children born. The father of all the sons of Heber, the brother of Japheth the elder, or Japheth the great, as it says in the Targum there. Okay. All right. Sons of Shem, Elam, and Assyria, or Ashshur, and Arpaxad, and Lud, and Aram, and Canaan. Okay. So we have this Ashshur guy who is a son of Shem. Pretty interesting. And the sons of Aram, Uz, Uai, and Gater, and Mosok, and Arpaxad begat Canaan. So this is another This is another Canaan guy. This is interesting. So it must have been maybe it's referring to Canaan, I wonder. So Arphaxad begot Canaan, and Canaan begot Salah, and Salah begot Eber. Okay, so it seems like there's this Canaan guy who is omitted from the Masoretic here in verse 24. And Eber were born two sons, the name of one Peleg, because in his days the earth was divided. And man, there's a lot of conspiracy on how people would take this verse. The thing is, the Tower of Babel is not yet, so I can't say that this is referring to the Tower of Babel. I wonder if this is referring to like continental drift, and in science you learn about Pangea and all that. So I kind of wonder. I don't know. That's more of a theory of mine. I can't really prove it, but we have to be honest here. This is Genesis 10. The actual Tower of Babel dividing doesn't happen until the next chapter. So if this is talking about in the moment that in his days that the earth was divided, we would kind of have a chronological problem to say that that's referring to Yahuwah dividing the Tower of Babel, dividing the languages and all that and the peoples. So, and Yaktan begot Almodad and Saleth and Salmorth and Yarak. Okay, and Adorna and Abel and Desia, Eval and Abimael and Saba and Ufir and Evila and Yobab. All these were the sons of Yaktan. Interesting. And their dwelling was from Manasseh till one comes to Saphera, the mountain of the east. And these were the sons of Shem in their tribes, according to their tongues, in their countries, and in their ethnoses or nations. Okay, so now we're at Genesis chapter 11. And I think after I read chapter 11, we're going to take a short break, a short intermission. So this is a lot to already digest right now. So let's see here. Let me just check. I want to check to see what I'm supposed to read unto with our Haftarah scripture readings. Okay, let's see here. Okay. All right, so 11 verse 32. Okay, so the whole chapter. All right. Okay, so Genesis 11. And the earth was one lip, and there was one language to all. And it came to pass, as they moved from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And a man said to his neighbor, come, let us make bricks and bake them with fire. And the brick was to them for stone, and their mortar was bitumen. And they said, come, let us build for ourselves a city and a tower, whose top shall be to heaven. That's interesting. The Targum says the pinnacle of heavens. That's interesting. And let us make ourselves a name before we are scattered abroad upon the face of all the earth. And Yahuwah came down to see the city and tower, which the sons of men built. And Yahuwah said, behold, there is one ethnicity and one lip of all, and they have begun to do this. Now nothing shall fail from them all that they have undertaken to do or imagined to do. It's interesting. Okay. Come, and having gone down, let us there confound their language. Okay. So let's see here. Okay. So let us confuse their language, and that they may not understand each voice of his neighbor. Okay. I kind of like how the Targum says, that a man shall not hear the language of his companion. That's interesting. And Yahuwah scattered them there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city and tower. Okay. On this account, its name was called Confusion, or Babel, because there Yahuwah confounded the languages of all the earth, and there Yahuwah scattered them upon all the face of the earth. Okay. And these are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old when he begot Arphaxad the second year after the flood, or after the deluge. And Shem lived, and after he had begotten Arphaxad 500 years, begot sons and daughters, and he died. Okay, so notice, even though Shem is righteous, now it's starting to go down to 500, but still it's not at 120. Okay. And Arphaxad lived 135 years and begot Canaan. And Arphaxad lived after he had begotten Canaan 400 years and begot sons and daughters and died. And Canaan lived 130 years and begot Salah. And Canaan lived after he had begotten Salah 330 years and begot sons and daughters, and he died. So there's something weird here. There's this other Canaan guy who is not the Canaan of Ham that is not mentioned in the Masoretic text or the Targums. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. And Salah lived 130 years and begot Eber. And Salah lived after he had begotten Eber 330 years and begot sons and daughters and died. Okay. All right. So Salah lived, begotten 430 years. It mentions nothing about him dying in the Targum. That's kind of interesting. Very interesting. And Eber lived 135 years and begot Peleg. Okay. And Eber lived after he had begotten Peleg 270 years and begot sons and daughters and died. So Eber lived about 270 and died. Peleg lived 130 years and begot Ragu. Peleg lived after he had begotten Ragu 209 years and begot sons and daughters and died. Ragu lived 132 years and begot Sarug. And Ra'u lived after he had begotten Sarug 207 years and begot sons and daughters and died. And Sarug lived 130 years and begot Nachor. And Sarug lived after he had begotten Nachor 200 years and begot sons and daughters and died. And Nachor lived 179 years and begot Terah. Tarha. Okay, verse 25 here. And Nachor lived after he had begotten Tarha 125 years and begot sons and daughters, and he died. Okay. And Tarha lived 70 years and begot Abram. Whoops. Okay, my bad. I hate it when it does that. I hate it when it keeps moving up. Okay. And Tarha lived 70 years and begot Abram and Nahor and Arhan. These are the generations of Terah. Terah begot Abram, Nahor, and Arhan begot Lot. Interesting. And Arhan died in the presence of Terah, his father, in the land which he was born, in the country of the Chaldees. Now, this is important because this is letting us know Abraham was not a born Hebrew, technically. He was a born pagan Babylonian. He actually grew up being a pagan. Okay. So he is what I would say. This is the beginning. I remember Brother Jeff mentioning to me, this is the beginning of the grafting in concept. When we were talking about the grafting in concept last week, how we don't see it fully yet. This is like the very start of it, you can say. The wild branch Abraham crossing over, becoming a Hebrew. Okay. He was born a Babylonian. Okay. So Ur of the Chaldees is the only difference here in the Aramaic. So same place. Okay. And Abram and Nahor took to themselves wives. The name of the wife of Abram was Sarah, and the name of the wife of Nahor, Malka, daughter of Arhan. and he was the father of Malka and the father of Yiska. And Sarah was barren and did not bear children. And Terah took Abram his son and Lot the son of Arhan, the son of his wife, and Sarah his daughter-in-law, the wife of Abram his son, and he led them forth out of the land of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan. They came as far as Haran, and he dwelt there. And all the days of Terah in the land of Haran were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. Okay, and before moving on, because we're about to take a break shortly after, if there's no comments or questions about what we just read, basically, I don't consider Jasher to be inspired or scripture or anything, but I do consider it to be useful for historical purposes. It seems like what is talked about, there's like one little story in Jasher talks about Abraham and how Yahuwah called him out of Babylon. I do find it interesting that it kind of adds to the canon, to the inspired word of Yahuwah. It kind of goes along with the same fact that he was born Babylonian. He was and he was actually called out of his father's house, as we see later on in Genesis, in a couple of chapters. I think actually in the next chapter it talks about how Abraham was called out. Yahuwah called him out of his father's house. So, but if you really want to get more info about how Abraham's conversion happened, I would recommend, and I stress to test these books. Don't just accept everything these books say, but I would recommend reading, just for historical purposes and understanding a little bit more extra info what happened to Abraham, how he became a Hebrew, and how he started understanding that Yahuwah was the true Elohim. I would recommend checking out the Apocalypse of Abraham. It has the same story as the Book of Jasher. So I would check out just those for historical type of info if you want to know like more info, because the canon doesn't really focus on his conversion too much. Kind of jumps right into when he's already a Hebrew. So in the next chapter. So that's just something I would recommend if you want more information about how Abraham went from being a pagan to being a worshiper of Yahuwah. So anyway, and again, I stress that I am not saying that Jasher is inspired, and I'm not saying that the Apocalypse or Abraham is inspired. I'm just saying for historical purposes, if you want to, if you want a little bit more info than what Yahuwah's inspired word gives us. So okay. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. I don't know if anyone else wanted to comment on what we just read. I know I just read through like a huge portion there. So if anyone wants to say that's pertaining to this topic, if not, we can take a break and go off record and we can stop the recording. So, all right. Okay. All right. So we're going to go off live right now. Thank you for joining us, all of our brothers and sisters out there, and those that are watching on Facebook Live right now. And so please stay tuned. We're going to continue our Torah portion very soon. We're just going to take a brief break. Okay. So shalom.